The decree had already been read twice before I understood what they were doing. The first time, I thought it was a translation error. Veranthi procedural language folds back on itself. Subordinate clauses nested inside subordinate clauses. The operative verb buried so deep that by the time you reach it, the clause it governs has expired. Our interpreter, quiet man named Dresh, who had spent 11 years learning to find those verbs, went still beside me. That was how I knew. The second reading confirmed it. Bifurcation of standing. The conclave was voting to split us. Our civilian attachés recognized under one charter, military liaison under a separate and subordinate one. Each half of the delegation legally present, neither half legally whole. A human delegation could address the conclave. A human half-delegation addressing another human half-delegation's concerns could not compel a response. The conclave would sit between us, mediating our internal contradiction, and the transit corridor negotiation would never formally open. Down the table, 8 of us. Dresh at my left elbow, his stylus resting on the pad, untouched. Commander Yella Sorn at the far end, her uniform jacket buttoned to the collar despite the chamber's heat. The 4 civilian specialists between us, and the 2 protocol officers behind. Nobody moved. The Conv's senior arbiter, a being called the First Mouth, robed in layered white, with the elongated features of the Veranthi elder caste, 3 sets of secondary eyelids, cycling slowly, waited for our objection. They had a response prepared. You could see it in the posture of every robed figure in the tiered gallery above us. The slight forward lean, the held stillness of something ready to spring. I did not object. I set my pen on the table. I stood up. There was a protocol to this. If a delegation contests a procedural ruling, there is a form, a standing challenge, a counter-petition, a request for the arbiter's review. The conclave had written that process. They knew every branch of it. The challenge window, the review period, the interim suspension of substantive talks, while the procedural question was adjudicated. Months, potentially. The transit corridor authorization expiring in the meantime, requiring a new survey, new filings. They had built the trap with care. I did not file the form. Dresh stood. I had not signaled him. He simply stood, the way you stand when the only remaining dignified motions is vertical. Yella Sorn stood, same silence. The 4 specialists stood. The 2 protocol officers behind us stood. 8 people, rising from a table without a word, exchanged among them. Because there was nothing that needed exchanging. The conclave had told us what kind of negotiation this was going to be. We had heard them. The First Mouth spoke. The delegation is reminded that departure, prior to procedural resolution, is recorded as. I was already walking. The chamber was long. The doors at the far end were tall and pale, inlaid Veranthi stone, the grain running vertical in 2 matching panels. I had noticed them when we entered that morning. The way you notice exits without meaning to. Steps on the marble were the only sound for 4 or 5 paces. Then Dresh's, slightly lighter. Then Sorn's, measured and even. Then the rest. Quiet procession, not hurried, not theatrical, simply leaving. Behind us, from the gallery, heard the sound the Veranthi make when a certainty fails. Not speech, something lower, resonant, harmonic in the chest cavity, that their elder caste produces involuntarily. They call it the correction tone in their own language, the sound of a body recalibrating a belief. I had heard it once before years earlier, in a minor arbitration that had gone sideways for them. I had not expected to hear it in a chamber this large. The doors opened ahead of us. One of the protocol officers had moved ahead and pushed them wide. Light from the outer corridor. I walked through without looking back. We stood in the corridor for a moment, the 8 of us, the doors closing behind us, the muffled resonance of the chamber continuing on the other side. Sorn came to stand beside me. She did not speak immediately, which I had come to understand as her version of tact. Dresh, I said. When did we file the alternate survey? He already had his pad out. 3 days ago. The Marin Passage route. Full hydrographic survey, corridor dimensions, transit load certification, filed with the Interstellar Commerce Registry under Provisional Charter. And the Veranthi Transit Corridor. Authorization lapses in 41 days regardless. The Marin filing is valid for 18 months, Sorn said. They didn't know about the Marin filing. No, I said. She was quiet for a moment. Through the stone doors, we could hear the conclave in full deliberation now. The elevated harmonics of a body that has pulled a lever and found the mechanism on the other side already removed. The Marin Passage had been a surveyor's footnote for 60 years. Longer transit time, more complex navigation undesirable compared to the Veranthi corridor in every metric except one, passed through no Veranthi-controlled space whatsoever. Our survey team had spent 8 months certifying it. We had filed it 3 days before these talks opened, on the calculation that we would either not need it or need it very badly. We needed it. I looked at Dresh. Send the notification. Standard form. Delegation has withdrawn from procedural session, pending review of charter standing. The registry. Copy the Transit Commerce Board. Now. He typed it while we stood there. 40 seconds perhaps. He showed me the screen. I read it and nodded. The conclave had wanted to divide us, to separate the military voice from the civilian one, make each half argue with the other while they managed the space between. It was a sound strategy for a body that had used it successfully for decades on delegations, that had no alternative but to stay at the table. What they had not accounted for, what they could not have known from outside, because we had not told them, was that we had not come to that table as our only option. We had come as our first option. There is a difference. First option failing does not produce a crisis. It produces the second option. Sorn pulled her collar button loose, finally, now that the formal session was done. How long before they sent a contact? Before we reach the transport, I considered. They'll want to appear measured. An hour, perhaps 2. And if they don't, then the Marin Passage opens in 41 days, and the Veranthi Corridor Authority lapses, and they spend the next decade watching traffic route around them. I picked up my case from where I'd set it by the door. They'll send a contact. She almost smiled. Not quite. Sorn was not a woman who smiled at the conclusion of things. She saved that for when they were fully finished, if at all. What she gave instead was a particular quality of attention, focused and settled, the expression of someone who has confirmed what they already knew. We walked down the corridor. Behind us, through the stone in the distance, the correction tone continued. Lower now, slower, the sound of a large body absorbing a fact it had not prepared for. I had heard it for 30 seconds in that minor arbitration years ago. It had lasted, I was told, for most of the afternoon session after we left. I did not feel satisfaction exactly. Satisfaction implies surprise. I felt the particular weight of a thing resolved, the specific gravity of a door closed behind you that you will not need to reopen. Dresh fell into step beside me. They'll want concessions on the Marin tolling schedule. They will. Are we prepared to give any? Some, I said. Reasonable ones. He made a note. Somewhere in the chamber behind us, the first mouth was speaking again, the low, formal cadences of a proceeding trying to reconstitute itself. I did not know what they were saying. It did not matter. The corridor was bright, and we walked.